Think about the last time you felt truly at peace. No buzzing notifications, no endless to-do lists, no racing thoughts. Now think about the reality of your average day. Deadlines looming, screens demanding attention, a world that never seems to slow down. This is the silent war we all fight, the battle between the relentless urgency of modern life and the deep, quiet stillness we crave. It's a conflict as old as civilization itself, but today it's louder than ever. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor who ruled Rome at its peak, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That power, that ability to cultivate stillness amid chaos, is what we're losing, and it's costing us more than we realize. This isn't just about productivity hacks or unplugging for a weekend. It's about something far deeper, the erosion of our inner peace, the slow suffocation of clarity under the weight of constant demands. The silent war isn't fought on battlefields or in boardrooms. It's waged in the quiet moments when you check your phone first thing in the morning, or when you lie awake at night replaying conversations. It's the tension between what the world asks of you and what your soul needs. Stoicism, an ancient philosophy forged in the fires of hardship, offers a way through this. Not by escaping the chaos, but by mastering your place within it. Imagine standing in the eye of a storm, the wind howling around you, yet you remain unmoved. That's the Stoic ideal, not a life without pressure, but a mind that doesn't buckle under it. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore how to reclaim that stillness. You'll discover practical tools to disarm urgency, to silence the noise without disconnecting from the world. This isn't about retreating into solitude. It's about finding tranquility while fully engaged in life. The silent war doesn't end, but you can learn to fight it on your terms. Let's begin. Urgency feels like a drumbeat in your skull, a relentless rhythm of now, now, now. It's the ping of a Slack message at midnight, the inbox that never empties, the gnawing sense that if you pause for even a second, you'll fall behind. But here's the truth, urgency is a trick. It's not the same as importance, though modern life conspires to make us believe they're identical. Think about it, how often do you rush to meet a deadline, only to realize later that the task didn't actually matter? The Stoics saw this trap 2,000 years ago. Seneca, in his letters, wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." His point wasn't about cramming more into each day. It was about recognizing that urgency is often just noise, while importance is the signal. Society wires us to react, to jump at every notification, to treat busyness as a badge of honor. But Stoicism teaches the opposite, deliberate action. Picture a surgeon in the operating room. There's no frantic rushing, no panic. Every movement is intentional, every decision measured. That's the Stoic ideal. Urgency thrives on autopilot. Stillness requires presence. The difference isn't speed, it's awareness. When you pause to ask, is this truly necessary? You strip urgency of its power. Consider the last week. How many of your urgent tasks were actually meaningful? How many were just reactions to someone else's anxiety or an arbitrary timeline? The modern mind treats urgency like oxygen essential, life-sustaining, but the Stoics knew better. They understood that urgency is a choice, not a mandate. Every time you confuse fast with vital, you surrender a piece of your peace. The antidote isn't slowing down, it's waking up. It's seeing urgency for what it really is, a shadow, not the substance. Stillness in the Stoic sense isn't about idleness or checking out of life. It's the art of holding steady amid the storm. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned adversity into wisdom, put it bluntly, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." That reaction begins with perception. Think of your mind as a still pond. Every urgent demand, every distraction, is a pebble tossed into the water. The ripples distort your reflection, making it hard to see clearly. But Stoic stillness isn't about stopping the pebbles. It's about learning to let the water settle again. This is where modern mindfulness and ancient wisdom converge. When you pause to observe your breath for just 10 seconds, you're not escaping reality, you're reclaiming it. You're doing what Epictetus urged, taking control of your impressions. Right now, try it. Stop reading, close your eyes, and count 10 breaths. Notice how the world doesn't collapse when you step back. That tiny space between stimulus and response, that's where Stoic stillness lives. The irony is that today's world sells stillness as a luxury, something to be bought with meditation apps or retreats. But the Stoics knew it as a discipline, available in the middle of a crowded street or a hectic workday. It's not about emptying your mind, it's about anchoring it. Picture a tree in high wind. The branches sway, but the roots hold firm. That's the practice, letting the chaos move around you without upending you. Here's the challenge we all face. Urgency shouts while stillness whispers. One demands immediate attention, the other requires patient cultivation. But when you train yourself to spot the difference, something shifts. The emails, the deadlines, the noise, they don't disappear, but they lose their power to hijack your peace. Stillness becomes not an escape, but a way of being fully present in the fray. The next time you feel the drumbeat of urgency, remember, the Stoics didn't seek a life without storms. They learned to stand steady within them. Marcus Aurelius faced invasions, political betrayals, and the weight of an empire, yet his private writings reveal a man obsessed not with controlling events, but with mastering his response to them. This is the Stoic dichotomy of control in action. The radical idea that peace comes from separating what's truly yours to command from what isn't. Picture yourself stuck in traffic. Your hands grip the wheel, your pulse quickens, but honking won't melt the gridlock. The Stoic asks, does this frustration change anything, or is it just stealing your stillness for no return? Modern life bombards us with external pressures dressed as emergencies. A client demands last-minute changes. A social media post goes unanswered. News cycles scream for your attention. But here's the pattern. None of these things actually control your mind unless you let them. Epictetus, born a slave, put it in brutal terms. Freedom isn't secured by filling your purse, but by emptying your mind of desire for what isn't yours. Your boss's mood, the stock market, even the weather, these are all outside the fortress of your will. Yet how often do we hand them the keys to our peace? Consider work emails. You can't control when they arrive or what they contain, but you dictate when you engage, how you interpret them, even whether you allow them to hijack your evening. The Stoics weren't passive, they were strategic. Marcus Aurelius rose before dawn to write in his journal, creating a buffer between himself and the empire's chaos. That small ritual was his declaration. External pressures don't get the first word of my day, so ask yourself, what outside forces are you mistaking for personal obligations? The colleague who treats their panic as your emergency, the algorithm designed to keep you scrolling. Every time you react on their timetable, you surrender internal control. But when you pause and ask, is this mine to fix? That's when stillness becomes an act of defiance. The traffic jam remains, the inbox still fills, but something shifts. You stop conflating the world's urgency with your own. This isn't resignation, it's liberation. Ancient Stoics faced storms at sea, exile, even death. Our battles, mostly notifications and imagined deadlines. Yet the principle holds: external pressures only win when we forget where our agency truly lies. The next time you feel stillness slipping away, channel Marcus in his tent at the front lines. Write it down: what's yours to change, what isn't. That simple line in the sand is where the silent war turns. Multitasking wears the mask of productivity, but underneath, it's just urgency in disguise. We scroll through emails while on Zoom calls, jot down grocery lists during meetings, and tell ourselves we're getting more done. But here's what the Stoics knew 2,000 years ago: the mind wasn't built for fragmentation. Seneca, who wrote volumes of philosophy while exiled on a rocky island, didn't split his attention. He immersed himself fully in one task, then moved to the next. To be everywhere, he warned, is to be nowhere. Modern science backs this up. Research shows that what we call multitasking is really just rapid task switching, and each shift comes with a cognitive tax. You might feel efficient, but you're actually draining your focus like a phone battery on too many apps. Compare this to the ancient philosopher's approach. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations, he didn't dictate them between battlefield updates. He carved out time for deep reflection, often before dawn. These weren't men with empty schedules. They were leaders, generals, and teachers. Yet they understood something we've forgotten: urgency thrives on distraction, while mastery demands singularity. Think of a sculptor chiseling marble one deliberate strike at a time, or a musician losing themselves in a single note. Depth requires undivided attention, and the Stoics treated their minds like sacred workshops, not cluttered multi-tool benches. The modern world tells us to juggle, but the cost is invisible. Every time you split your focus, you're not just slowing down, you're training your brain to crave fragmentation. Notifications become dopamine hits, and soon, even reading a book without checking your phone feels like a chore. This isn't productivity, it's addiction dressed in a suit. The Stoic alternative: single tasking, not as a productivity hack but as a rebellion against the myth that busyness equals worth. Here's a challenge: for the next hour, do one thing. Just one. If you're writing, write. If you're listening, listen. When your mind wanders to the laundry or the inbox, notice it, then gently return. No judgment, no frustration. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. You'll likely fail at first. The urge to switch tasks will feel physical, like an itch. That's the urgency trap working its magic. But each time you resist, you're reclaiming something precious: your capacity for depth. The Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they faced their own distractions: gossip in the agora, the chaos of political life. Their solution wasn't withdrawal, it was disciplined engagement. One task, one moment, one breath at a time. Try it today. Let the emails wait, let the notifications pile up. For 1 hour, be where you are. The world will keep spinning, but you might just find the stillness you've been fighting for. Your smartphone is a slot machine in your pocket. Every notification a pull of the lever, every scroll a gamble for your attention. But here's what Epictetus, the Stoic who turned adversity into wisdom, would say: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. That's the heart of Stoic resistance to digital distraction. It's not about rejecting technology, but about refusing to let it hijack your inner stillness. Think about it. When was the last time you checked your phone without even realizing you'd reached for it? That's not habit, it's conditioning. Urgency thrives on these unconscious reflexes, turning your devices into constant bid for your focus. Consider social media algorithms. They're engineered to exploit your brain's craving for novelty, serving up endless stimuli disguised as connection or entertainment. But the Stoics practiced something radical: intentional ignorance. not because they feared information, but because they valued clarity. Seneca would regularly take breaks from Rome's chaos to simplify his life, writing, "The person who has everywhere has nowhere." Today's equivalent, a digital detox, isn't about deprivation, it's about reclaiming sovereignty over your attention. Start small. Designate 1 hour each morning where your phone stays in another room. Notice how the world doesn't collapse. Notice how your mind begins to settle. Now ask yourself, which app steals your stillness most? Is it the email that turns you into a 24/7 customer service rep for other people's demands? The news feed that floods you with outrage before breakfast? The messaging platform that blurs the line between work and home? Name it, then challenge it. The Stoics didn't avoid hard things, they confronted them with discipline. Try this. For the next 3 days, delete one draining app from your home screen. Not permanently, just long enough to break its hypnotic grip. Watch what happens when you stop feeding the urgency machine. You'll likely feel phantom vibrations at first, a restless itch to check. That's not withdrawal, it's awakening. Here's the paradox: your phone holds infinite knowledge, yet constant access to it can make you shallower. The Stoics carried scrolls, not smartphones, but their principle holds. Tools should serve your growth, not fracture your focus. Picture your mind as a garden. Digital distractions are invasive weeds. They don't just occupy space, they choke out what you're trying to cultivate. Weeding isn't a one-time event, it's daily maintenance. So tonight, charge your phone outside the bedroom. Tomorrow, eat one meal without it. These aren't radical acts, they're rebellions against a world that profits from your scattered attention. Epictetus warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Today, that mastery means controlling your relationship with screens, not with guilt or grand gestures, but with the quiet consistency the Stoics revered. Your phone is a tool, not a tyrant. The moment you remember that, the silent war shifts and stillness becomes a choice, not a casualty. There's a counterintuitive Stoic practice that flips urgency on its head. It's called negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum. Instead of avoiding worst-case scenarios, the Stoics deliberately imagined them. Why? Because urgency thrives on surprise, on that jolt of adrenaline when things go wrong. But what if nothing catches you off guard? Seneca, who faced exile and political turmoil, wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Picture this: you're about to present to your company's executives. The projector fails, your notes disappear, your mind races. Now rewind. What if you'd already visualized this disaster days ago? Not to dwell in fear, but to rehearse calm. Suddenly, the crisis isn't a shock. It's a scenario you've already navigated in your mind. This isn't pessimism, it's preparedness. Modern psychology calls it stress inoculation. The Stoics called it wisdom. When you regularly contemplate losing your job, your health, even your loved ones, something paradoxical happens. The grip of urgency loosens. Not because you stop caring, but because you've already faced the emotional storm in advance. Think of it like a fire drill. The alarm isn't meant to scare you. It's there so when real flames erupt, your body knows the exits. Seneca practiced this daily, writing, "Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant." By willingly visiting hardship in his imagination, he became impossible to drag. Try it now with a mundane modern stressor. Your biggest client emails at 5 p.m. demanding changes by morning. Your chest tightens. But what if you'd already pictured this moment last week? You'd have seen yourself pausing, assessing options, perhaps replying, "I'll prioritize this first thing." No panic, just protocol. That's the power of negative visualization. It turns emergencies into exercises. The Stoics didn't wait for shipwrecks to practice resilience. They mentally shipwrecked themselves daily. here's where modern urgency culture gets it backward. We're taught to avoid discomfort, to numb uncertainty with busyness, but the Stoics knew avoidance amplifies fear. Like a child covering their eyes during a thunderstorm, we think if we ignore life's unpredictability, it can't hurt us. Negative visualization removes the hands from our eyes. It asks, what's the actual worst that could happen? Often, the answer isn't catastrophe, it's inconvenience. Missed deadlines mean conversations, not executions. Lost phones mean temporary disconnection, not isolation. Seneca's letters reveal a man who kept death at the forefront of his mind, not morbidly, but to sharpen his appreciation for the present. He wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life." That preparation didn't paralyze him, it freed him from trivial urgencies. When you've already faced the specter of failure, a demanding boss or a crowded inbox loses its fangs. The practice isn't about expecting disaster, it's about realizing you can withstand it. Start small. Tonight, spend 60 seconds imagining your Wi-Fi crashing before a big submission. Picture yourself breathing, adapting, finding solutions. Do this daily and watch how urgency's volume lowers. The storms still come, but you've already learned to dance in the rain. Most mornings begin the same way, a hand fumbling for the phone before your eyes even open, the glow of the screen replacing sunrise. Emails, news alerts, social updates flood in like a tide, and before your feet hit the floor, your mind is already racing to catch up with the world's demands. Now imagine a different start, waking to silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness. This is where Stoic morning rituals begin, not with escape, but with deliberate grounding. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire at war, wrote his meditations not in peaceful retreat, but in the pre-dawn dark. His words weren't lofty philosophy, they were daily armor. When you arise in the morning, he wrote, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That simple act, pausing to anchor in gratitude before the storm of the day, was his ritual. Modern life treats mornings like a sprint out of the gate. We confuse motion with progress, mistaking the rush of caffeine and notifications for productivity. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that how you begin shapes how you endure. Picture two versions of your morning, one where you're reactive, swept into the current of other people's urgencies before you've even tied your shoes. The other, 5 minutes of stillness, may be journaling 3 things you're grateful for, or simply sitting with your breath. The difference isn't time, it's intention. Those 5 minutes aren't a pause button on life. They're a recalibration of your inner compass. Consider the science behind this. Studies show that morning routines reduce decision fatigue, that mental exhaustion from constant micro-choices that leaves you drained by noon. The Stoics didn't have fMRI scans, but they grasped this intuitively. Seneca structured his mornings around reflection, calling it the quiet before the tempest. His version of journaling wasn't just self-help, it was a mental audit. What's within my control today? What distractions will try to hijack my focus? By naming them at dawn, he robbed them of their power by midday. Here's the challenge. Tomorrow, carve out 5 minutes before you touch your phone. Sit by a window or even just the edge of your bed. Write down one thing you're grateful for, not the grand abstractions like health or family, but the concrete, the warmth of the blanket, the smell of coffee brewing, the fact that you have a bed at all. This practice, called micro-gratitude, mirrors Marcus Aurelius' habit of dissecting blessings into their smallest parts. It's harder than it sounds. Your mind will rebel, itching to check messages or mentally rehearse your to-do list. That's the point. Stillness isn't the absence of distraction. It's the act of returning again and again to the present. The modern world will tell you that stillness is a luxury, something for retreats or spa days. The Stoics treated it as necessity, like drinking water. Epictetus, who taught philosophy while sleeping on a hard floor, insisted that morning rituals weren't about comfort but clarity. First say to yourself what you would be, he advised, then do what you have to do. That gap between intention and action, that's where morning stillness lives. It's not about adding another task to your routine. It's about subtracting the noise that drowns out your purpose. So tonight, place your phone across the room. Tomorrow, when the alarm rings, resist the reflex to reach for it. Instead, reach inward. You don't need candles or mantras, just 5 minutes to remember who you are before the world tells you who to be. The emails will still arrive, the meetings will still demand your presence, but something subtle shifts when you start the day as the Stoics did, not as a servant to urgency, but as a student of stillness. The chaos will come, but now you'll meet it from solid ground. A slammed door, a harsh email, a careless comment. Your pulse quickens, your jaw tightens, and the words are already forming before you've thought them through. This is the moment the Stoics trained for. Epictetus, who endured slavery and exile, laid down the challenge. Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. That split-second pause, that's where your power lies. Modern neuroscience confirms what ancient philosophy knew. There's a gap, sometimes just half a second, between stimulus and response. Urgency wants to obliterate that gap. Stillness protects it. Picture this: a colleague takes credit for your idea in a team meeting. Heat floods your face. Your fingers twitch toward your keyboard to fire off a passive-aggressive message. But what if instead you stood up and walked to the window? What if you counted 5 breaths? The slighted feeling doesn't vanish, but something changes. You're no longer a hostage to it. The Stoic pause isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about creating space to choose your next move. Seneca called this the discipline of assent, the practice of not immediately agreeing with every impression that storms your mind. Now apply this to the micro moments that define your day. The overflowing sink when you're already late, the customer yelling over a policy you didn't create, the notification that triggers a doom scroll. Each is an invitation to practice what Epictetus described as the art of acquiescence, not to the external event, but to your own sovereignty over how you respond. Here's the secret: urgency thrives on immediacy. It wants you to react before you've had time to question whether the reaction serves you. But stillness is the ultimate disruptor. When you pause, you expose urgency's bluff. Try an experiment today. Install 3 intentional pauses. Before replying to that frustrating text, set your phone down and stretch. When someone cuts you off in traffic, tap the steering wheel 3 times instead of the horn. These aren't grand gestures, they're resistance training for your mind. The Stoics didn't pretend emotions didn't exist. They simply refused to let them drive. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. That's the essence of the pause, recognizing that between what happens and what happens next, there's a territory you alone govern. Where could this transform your day? Maybe in the argument that never starts because you waited 10 seconds before speaking, or the career-damaging email you didn't send. Or simply in the quiet triumph of realizing you're no longer on autopilot. The world will keep throwing sparks. The pause is how you keep from catching fire. We live in a world that worships the grind, where "I'm so busy" has become a twisted status symbol, and productivity apps promise to squeeze every last drop from your waking hours. But 2,000 years ago, Seneca saw this coming. In his piercing essay on the shortness of life, he wrote, life is long enough if you know how to use it. Not if you cram more in, but if you stop pouring your days into leaky containers. Modern hustle culture would have us believe that filling every minute equals living fully. The Stoics knew better. They measured life not in tasks crossed off, but in depth of engagement. Take a hard look at your calendar. How much of that colorful grid is reactive? Meetings you didn't choose, deadlines someone else set, obligations that leave you drained. Seneca called this allowing others to steal your life. His solution wasn't laziness, but ruthless prioritization. Imagine your time as a jar. Hustle culture tells you to pack in as many pebbles as possible. More calls, more projects, more scrolling. But the Stoics suggest a different approach. Place the big rocks first, your true priorities, then let the smaller tasks fill the gaps. The irony, you'll actually fit more meaningful work in because you're no longer drowning in trivial urgencies. This is where deep work becomes revolutionary, not the performative kind where you post #hustle selfies at your desk, but the sacred, undistracted focus Seneca championed. He'd block entire mornings for study, writing, and contemplation, calling this claiming ownership of your days. Try it today, protect one single hour. Not for multitasking or quick fixes, but for sustained thought. Turn off notifications, close the tabs. If a thought about dinner or laundry drifts in, jot it down and return to the task. At first, it'll feel impossible. Your brain, trained by modern fragmentation, will rebel like a muscle atrophied from disuse. That's the point. Consider how we treat time versus money. You'd never hand a stranger your wallet to rifle through, yet we surrender hours to pointless meetings or algorithm-fed rabbit holes. Seneca observed, people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful. The fix: audit your time like a financial planner. For 3 days, track every half hour. You'll spot the leaks, the 20 minutes lost to social media between tasks, the hours sucked into emails that could have been bullet points. Then, like Seneca arranging his scrolls, reorganize. Cluster shallow tasks into batches. Guard your peak energy hours for deep work like a lion protects its kill. Here's the radical truth hustle culture won't tell you. Stillness accelerates mastery. A violinist doesn't improve by practicing distracted for 10 hours straight, but by 90 minutes of razor-focused repetition. The same applies to your work. When you dedicate protected time to thinking, not just doing, you solve problems faster, create better, and paradoxically, gain more free time. Marcus Aurelius didn't build an empire by reacting to every missive. He rose before dawn to clarify his thoughts. Your version might look simpler: 30 minutes sketching a project outline without interruption, or walking without a podcast to let ideas marinate. The modern world will try to convince you that busyness equals worth. The Stoics offer a subversive alternative, that true productivity begins with the courage to be still. Not every open slot needs filling. Not every ping deserves attention. Tonight, when you plan tomorrow, block 1 hour as untouchable. Call it your Seneca hour. No agendas, no metrics, just space to think deeply about what actually matters. At first, it'll feel like playing hooky, but soon you'll recognize the deeper truth. Those are the moments when real work gets done. Boredom has become the modern mind's boogeyman, a void we scramble to fill with podcasts, social media, and endless scrolling. But what if we've got it backward? The Stoics didn't just tolerate boredom, they welcomed it as fertile ground for creativity and self-discovery. Seneca wrote letters describing long walks with no destination, calling them opportunities to converse with himself. No audiobooks, no playlists, just the rhythm of his footsteps and the unfiltered flow of his thoughts. Today, we'd call that wasted time. The Stoics called it essential. Think about the last time you stood in line or waited for a train without pulling out your phone. That restless itch to distract yourself, that's not just habit, it's fear. Fear of being alone with your thoughts, fear of missing out, fear of stillness. But here's the paradox: boredom isn't emptiness. It's the blank canvas where your mind begins to paint. Studies show that people who endure boredom score higher on creativity tests. Why? Because when external stimuli fade, your brain starts making its own connections. The very moments we try to escape are often where breakthroughs quietly form. Marcus Aurelius practiced this deliberately. Between battles and imperial decrees, he'd sit alone in his tent, not meditating in the modern sense, but simply observing his mind like a scientist watching clouds. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That retreat wasn't about bliss, it was about confronting the raw material of his thoughts without filters. Today's equivalent: staring out a train window instead of at a screen, noticing the play of shadows on a wall instead of refreshing your inbox. These small acts of surrender to boredom are micro-rebellions against the cult of constant stimulation. Try this challenge next time you feel boredom's tug waiting for coffee to brew. Sitting in a lobby, resist the reflex to reach for your phone. Count to 60 instead. Notice how your breathing slows. Observe the room's details, the hum of lights, the texture of walls. At first, it'll feel agonizingly slow. That's the point. You're detoxing from dopamine hits, retraining your brain to find nourishment in stillness. The Stoics believed these moments weren't interruptions in life, they were life. Epictetus, who taught philosophy while living in a hut with just a bed and a lamp, said, "If you seek truth, you will not seek victory by dishonorable means." The modern parallel: if you seek depth, you won't try to cheat boredom with cheap distractions. Consider how children engage with boredom. Left without devices, they invent games, talk to imaginary friends, study ants on sidewalks. That's the Stoic ideal: not passive endurance, but active engagement with the ordinary. The philosopher Musonius Rufus taught that simplicity trains the mind like weights train muscles. Boredom, then, isn't the enemy of productivity. It's the gym where mental resilience gets stronger. Here's where most productivity advice fails. It assumes every second must be optimized. But the Stoics measured richness differently. A farmer doesn't panic during winter because the fields lie fallow. He knows dormancy prepares the soil. Your mind works the same way. Those unproductive moments staring at the ceiling, that's your cognitive soil resting. Next time you're tempted to fill silence with noise, ask, am I distracting or cultivating? The answer might surprise you. The world will keep shouting that boredom is the enemy. The Stoics whisper back, it's the ally you've been pushing away. Let it in and watch what grows. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you say no to something essential. That's the heart of Stoic discernment: not rejection for its own sake, but protection of what matters most. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned personal hardship into universal wisdom, put it bluntly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid by those who don't share your values. Modern boundary setting often gets framed as selfishness, but the Stoics saw it as sacred geometry, the deliberate design of a life aligned with virtue. Picture this: a colleague asks you to lead yet another low-impact committee. Your stomach tightens. Part of you wants to say yes, to avoid conflict, to maintain the illusion of indispensability. But beneath that lies the real question: does this serve your purpose or someone else's convenience? The ancient Stoics faced this dilemma in stark terms. When Emperor Nero ordered Seneca to attend his decadent banquets, Seneca had to choose complicity or exile. He chose exile, not because he was stubborn, but because he knew some yeses cost more than their worth. Fast forward to today. The coworker who dumps last-minute work before vacation, the family member who treats your time like a public library, the inbox that behaves like a never-ending request line. Each yes seems small in isolation, but together they form a life someone else designed. Here's where modern psychology and ancient philosophy converge. Research shows that people who struggle with boundaries often confuse being needed with being valued. The Stoics cut through that illusion with surgical precision. Epictetus wrote, "It's impossible to learn what you think you already know. If you believe your worth depends on endless availability, you'll never discover the freedom of focused intention." Try this reframe: saying no isn't rejection, it's redirection. When you decline a trivial task, you're not withholding help, you're preserving capacity for meaningful contribution. Consider the practicalities. This week, when a non-essential request lands, whether it's an unnecessary meeting or a favor that derails your priorities, pause. Channel Epictetus' 3-filter test. Is this within my control? Does it align with my values? Will agreeing move me toward virtue or away from it? Then respond with what the Stoics called kind firmness. Not "I'm swamped," which invites negotiation, but "I can't commit to that right now," which honors your limits. The first few times will feel uncomfortable. That's not failure, it's rewiring. The deeper truth: every no is a secret love letter to your highest priorities. When Marcus Aurelius declined lavish parties to write in his journal, he wasn't being antisocial. He was protecting the stillness that made him an effective leader. Your version might look different: skipping a gossip session to finish a creative project, or silencing notifications during family dinners. The principle remains: discernment isn't about austerity. It's about ensuring your yeses carry weight. Modern life will keep testing your resolve with urgent requests disguised as opportunities. The Stoic art of refusal turns those tests into triumphs, not of willpower but of clarity. Start small. Decline one thing this week, not with guilt, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows what they're guarding. The world might call it selfishness. Epictetus would call it wisdom. Your breath is the bridge between your body and mind, a rhythm you carry with you everywhere, yet rarely notice unless it falters. The Stoics didn't just see breathing as automatic, they treated it as the most portable tool for stillness. Marcus Aurelius, in his private writings, often returned to this simple truth: observe the breath. In that observation, you find the space between reaction and response. He wasn't talking about complex meditation techniques. He was pointing to something far more accessible: the power of intentional breathing to anchor you in the present, especially when urgency tries to pull you under. Think about the last time stress hijacked you. Maybe your heart raced before a presentation, or your chest tightened during an argument. In those moments, your breath becomes shallow, erratic, a physical echo of mental chaos. The Stoic solution: 4-count breathing, not as a mystical practice but as a tactical reset. Here's how it works. Inhale deeply for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold again for 4. Repeat. This isn't just calming, it's neuroscience in action. By elongating your exhales, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural brake pedal. Marcus called this returning to the breath, but today we'd recognize it as biohacking your way back to clarity. Try it right now. Close your eyes for just 1 cycle. 4 counts in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. Notice how your shoulders drop slightly, how the noise in your mind dims just for those 16 seconds. That's the Stoic secret. You don't need a silent room or a meditation cushion. You only need the discipline to pause and reclaim your rhythm. Epictetus, who taught philosophy while battling physical pain, put it plainly: you are not your body, but the one who commands it. Your breath is the first command. The modern world treats breathing as background noise, something to ignore until you're gasping for air. The Stoics treated it as a metronome for the mind. Picture a musician tuning an instrument before a performance. That's what 4-count breathing does for your thoughts. When Seneca felt overwhelmed by political scheming, he'd retreat to his study and focus solely on his breath until the storm of externals passed. He wasn't escaping reality, he was recalibrating his ability to face it. Here's where most people miss the mark. They assume Stoic breathing is about relaxation, but it's really about precision. A surgeon doesn't take deep breaths to nap. They do it to steady their hands. Similarly, when you're about to send that heated email or make a snap decision, 4-count breathing isn't a way to avoid the moment. It's how you enter it with clarity. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself. Let no impulse be untested by the breath. In other words, don't let urgency rush you past your own wisdom. Make this practice invisible armor. Before your next meeting, take 3 cycles at your desk. When a notification spikes your cortisol, respond with 1 intentional exhale. The goal isn't to eliminate stress, it's to prevent stress from eliminating you. The Stoics didn't have heart rate monitors or stress apps. They had something better, the unshakable knowledge that stillness is always 1 breath away. A blank page can be the most powerful mirror, not to reflect who you are, but who you're becoming. The Stoics didn't just write journals, they wielded them like scalpels, dissecting the day's chaos to find the quiet truth beneath. Seneca, who penned letters by candlelight after Rome's political storms, called evening reflection the medicine of the soul, not a passive recounting of events, but an active interrogation. Where did urgency trick me today? What false fires did I rush to put out? His practice wasn't about self-judgment, it was about liberation through clarity. Picture this: you close your laptop after a frenzied workday. Your mind hums with unfinished tasks, lingering tensions, that one email you wish you'd phrased differently. Most of us reach for distraction, scrolling, streaming, anything to drown out the noise. But the Stoic reaches for something far more radical, a notebook, not to vent or spiral, but to sift. Start with Seneca's favorite question: what disturbed my peace today? Not superficially, like a traffic jam or rude comment, but deeply. Was it the fear of falling behind, the discomfort of an unmet expectation, the moment you handed your calm to someone else's crisis? Here's where modern journaling often misses the mark. We either chronicle events like courtroom stenographers, had meeting at 3, ate salad for lunch, or we spiral into self-pity. Stoic journaling is neither. It's forensic. Try tonight. Divide your page into 2 columns. On the left, list the day's disruptions, the coworker who derailed your focus, the anxiety about an upcoming deadline. On the right, apply Epictetus' filter. Was this within my control? The coworker's behavior wasn't. Your decision to let it consume your afternoon was. That's the pivot point. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, the most famous Stoic journal, wasn't written for publication. It was his private training ground. When he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he wasn't preaching. He was reminding himself after a day of imperial pressures. Your version might look humbler. The client moved the deadline. I chose to panic. Next time I'll ask, can I influence this? If yes, act. If no, release. That's not just reflection, it's rewiring. Stoic prompts cut deeper than generic gratitude lists. After what disturbed me, ask, how did I contribute to this? Urgency loves to play the victim, blaming external forces, but journaling exposes the lie. Maybe you said yes to a non-essential request or skipped lunch, guaranteeing an afternoon crash. Then, the knockout question: what would my wisest self have done differently? Not to shame, but to strategize, Seneca revisited his journals to spot patterns. times he'd mistaken others' emergencies for his own. Your notebook will reveal yours, perhaps people-pleasing or conflating speed with significance. The magic happens when you close the journal. Those insights don't stay trapped on paper. They seep into your bones. Tomorrow, when a similar disruption arises, you'll catch yourself. This is what I wrote about last night. That's the Stoic advantage. You're not facing each day blindfolded. You've already rehearsed the script in the quiet of reflection. Tonight, before sleep claims you, try this. Set a timer for 7 minutes, Seneca's preferred duration. Ask the 3 questions: what disturbed me? What was my role? How would wisdom respond? Then let the pen move without overthinking. The goal isn't poetic prose, it's excavating truth. Over time, you'll spot the silent war's battlefields not in your calendar, but in your own choices. And there, in the margins of a notebook, you'll reclaim what urgency stole, the clarity to choose differently. The modern world measures productivity in clicks, keystrokes, and calendar blocks, as if human worth could be quantified like factory output. But scroll through Seneca's letters, and you'll find a radical question. What good is a full day if the soul stays empty? The Stoics drew a line between motion and purpose that our hustle culture has blurred beyond recognition. Think about your last productive day: crossed off tasks, back-to-back Zooms, hundreds of emails processed. Now ask, how much of that activity actually moved the needle on what matters? Not just to your boss or your bank account, but to your character, your relationships, the legacy you're quietly building. That's the illusion, mistaking movement for progress, mistaking exhaustion for excellence. Consider the typical productivity trap. You wake to a buzzing to-do list, sprint through meetings, and collapse into bed feeling both drained and vaguely unfulfilled. Repeat this enough times and the cycle starts to feel inevitable. But Seneca saw through this 2,000 years ago. Being busy does not always mean real work. The object of all work is production or accomplishment, and to either of these ends there must be forethought, system, planning, intelligence. In other words, activity without intention is just dressed-up distraction. The modern worker might log 12 hours at their desk, while the Stoic asks, how many of those hours were spent choosing your focus rather than surrendering to others' demands? Here's where Stoic metrics differ. Instead of counting completed tasks, they measured alignment. Did your actions today reflect your deepest values? Did you respond to challenges with wisdom rather than reactivity? Marcus Aurelius kept a journal not to track accomplishments, but to audit his own growth. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. That's the litmus test modern productivity culture avoids because it's merciless. You can't fake virtue with a bullet journal. Take email as a case study. Most productivity hacks focus on processing speed, how to clear your inbox faster. But the Stoic approach would ask, why are you receiving these emails at all? Which ones stem from unclear boundaries, which could be eliminated by a 5-minute conversation instead of a thread? The difference is profound. One method treats symptoms while the other cures the disease. Epictetus, who taught philosophy in a marketplace surrounded by distractions, put it bluntly, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Most of us invert this. We let the world's chatter dictate our actions, then wonder why we feel adrift. The illusion cracks when you realize how much productive work is actually theater. The lengthy report no one reads, the meeting that could have been an email, the performative busyness we mistake for indispensability. Seneca called this life lived in preparation for life, always getting ready to start but never truly beginning. Contrast this with the artisan who spends hours polishing a single cabinet joint, or the writer who deletes 1,000 words to find the 10 that matter. Depth over breadth, mastery over metrics. Try this audit today. For every task you complete, rate it on 2 scales. First, urgency, how loudly it screamed for attention. Second, importance, how deeply it aligns with your long-term purpose. You'll likely spot a pattern. The urgent rarely overlaps with the meaningful. That gap is where Stoic stillness thrives. It's not about doing less, but about doing what lasts. The next time you feel proud of a productive day, pause. Ask not what you checked off, but what you built. Not how busy you were, but who you became in the process. The answer might surprise you. There's a reason some of history's greatest thinkers, from Seneca to Nietzsche, were obsessive walkers. It wasn't just for exercise, it was a moving meditation, a way to let the rhythm of footsteps untangle the knots of the mind. The ancient peripatetic school of philosophy literally walked their way to wisdom, holding debates and lectures while strolling through Athens' colonnades. Seneca, who often escaped Rome's chaos to wander the countryside, wrote, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." That's the essence of the Stoic walk, not a power hike for cardio, but a deliberate slowing down to match the pace of your thoughts with the pace of your feet. Picture this: you step outside after hours at your desk. Instead of plugging into a podcast or scrolling as you move, you leave your ears open to the world. The crunch of gravel under your shoes, the distant chatter of birds, the way sunlight filters through leaves. These aren't distractions, they're anchors pulling you back into your body and out of the mental whirlwind. Modern life treats walking as wasted time unless it's optimized with audiobooks or calls. The Stoics treated it as sacred space. Marcus Aurelius often walked alone in the palace gardens, not to escape his duties, but to return to them with sharper focus. Here's the challenge. Tomorrow, take 10 minutes, just 10, and walk without any technology. No headphones, no phone in hand, no agenda. Start by noticing your breath syncing with your steps. Then widen your awareness, the temperature of the air, the weight of your body against the ground, the play of shadows on the sidewalk. When your mind inevitably drifts to work or worries, gently guide it back to the physical world around you. This isn't about emptying your mind, it's about filling it with something richer than mental clutter. Seneca believed nature was the ultimate therapist. In his letters, he described how a simple walk could recalibrate his perspective. How much more beautiful does the daylight seem after emerging from a dark tunnel? You don't need a forest or a mountain to practice this. A city block works just as well if you're truly seeing it. Notice the way light reflects off a window, the pattern of cracks in the pavement, the rhythm of strangers' footsteps. These tiny observations are antidotes to urgency, reminders that the world moves at more than one speed. The Stoic walk has a hidden superpower. It turns monotony into mindfulness. That same route you take every day to the coffee shop, walk it like it's your first time. Notice how the bakery smells different in the morning versus the afternoon. How the angle of the sun changes what you see. Epictetus, who praised the discipline of attention, would call this seeing with beginner's eyes. Most of us barrel through our days on autopilot, mistaking familiarity for invisibility. But the philosopher's walk asks, what are you missing because you've decided there's nothing left to see? Try this variation, the problem-solving stroll. Next time you're stuck on a decision or creative block, walk with a single question in mind, not to force an answer, but to let your subconscious chew on it. Darwin famously worked out evolution's finer points during his daily thinking path walks. The movement of your body loosens the rigidity of your thoughts, creating space for insights to surface. Seneca swore by this method, writing, "Solvitur ambulando," it is solved by walking. The modern world will tell you that stillness only happens when you're motionless on a meditation cushion. The Stoics knew better. Stillness isn't the absence of movement, it's the presence of attention. Whether you're pacing a tiny apartment or hiking a trail, your feet can become a metronome for clarity. Tomorrow, when the weight of urgency feels heaviest, remember, sometimes the most productive thing you can do is walk away, not from your problems, but into the quiet wisdom of your own stride. Your inbox pings and your stomach knots, that familiar lurch between "I should check this" and "I can't face another demand." Email anxiety isn't just about volume, it's the illusion that every message holds equal weight. Marcus Aurelius wrestled with this 2,000 years ago. You are not compelled to form any opinion about this matter before you, nor disturb your peace of mind at all. Things in themselves have no power to extort a verdict from you. His insight, the inbox, doesn't control you. You assign it power with every reflexive click. Consider the modern myth of email urgency. A client's midnight follow-up, a boss's flagged message, a newsletter you'll never read, they all wear the same disguise: important. But Stoic detachment asks a sharper question. Is this truly mine to carry? Batch-checking processing emails in deliberate windows, say 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., isn't just a productivity hack. It's a philosophical stance. By refusing to let notifications hijack your attention on their schedule, you reclaim sovereignty over your focus. Picture Seneca in his study, sorting scrolls into piles, to answer now, to ponder later, and to discard unread. Your version might look like turning off push notifications and treating your inbox as a mailbox, something you empty intentionally, not compulsively. Here's the practice for 1 week: silence alerts and schedule 2 daily email sessions. Before opening, pause, recite Marcus's reminder: the thing itself has no power over the mind. Then triage ruthlessly. Ask of each message, does this require action from me? Is today the right day for it? If not, drag it to a later folder. You'll spot a pattern. Most urgent emails are someone else's lack of planning, not your emergency. The Stoics called this the discipline of ascent, consciously choosing which impressions to endorse with your energy. The deeper shift happens when you notice the fear driving constant inbox checks. It's not just efficiency, it's the terror of missing out, of being perceived as unresponsive. But Epictetus, born into slavery, would scoff. If someone speaks badly of you because you didn't reply instantly, is that your burden or theirs? Test this. Reply to a non-urgent email 6 hours later than usual. Observe how rarely the sky falls. Each small defiance of faux urgency weakens its grip. Email anxiety thrives on ambiguity, the unanswered message as an open loop. The Stoic solution: close the loop yourself. End each batch session with decisive actions. Delete, delegate, or draft a concise reply. Leave nothing in "I'll get to it" purgatory. Marcus journaled nightly to put the day to rest. Your inbox deserves the same ritual. A 5-minute review to archive or act ensures no phantom tasks haunt your off hours. The final frontier, the sent folder. Stoicism teaches that once an action aligns with virtue, attachment to outcomes is vanity. You crafted a thoughtful response. Whether the recipient appreciates it isn't yours to govern. Refresh that page obsessively. You've traded one leash for another. Seneca wrote letters knowing some would go unanswered. His peace didn't hinge on replies, it rested in the integrity of his effort. Your turn. Hit send, then close the tab. The right people will respond in their time. The rest, their silence speaks volumes, none of them about your worth. Silence was never empty for the Stoics. It was fertile ground where wisdom took root. While modern life treats quiet as something to fill with podcasts or background TV, ancient philosophers saw it as an active practice, a gymnasium for the mind. Pythagoras, centuries before Marcus Aurelius, required his students to observe 5 years of strict silence before speaking in his academy. This wasn't about repression, it was about developing the capacity to listen, to others, to nature, and most crucially, to their own thoughts. Imagine entering a room where no one speaks unless their words have been weighed. That's the Stoic ideal, silence as the sieve that separates impulse from insight. Consider your last meal. Chances are it was accompanied by scrolling, conversation, or the glow of a screen. Now picture eating in total silence, no distractions, no entertainment, just the taste of food and the rhythm of chewing. At first, it might feel unsettling, even tedious. That discomfort reveals how addicted we've become to constant stimulation. Seneca practiced this deliberately, writing about meals where the only sound was the clink of spoons, not as austerity, but as an exercise in presence. The challenge isn't to endure boredom, but to discover what surfaces when you stop drowning out your own mind. The Pythagorean silence ritual had a practical purpose. It prevented reactive speech. Students learned to sit with half-formed thoughts instead of blurting the first thing that came to mind. Apply this to modern conflicts, the text you fire off in anger, the meeting where you interrupt to be heard. Silence in this context becomes a shield against impulsivity. Epictetus framed it as self-defense. If someone speaks badly of you, instead of arguing, say, "He doesn't know my other faults, or he would have mentioned those too." The power lies not in suppressing your voice, but in choosing when to deploy it strategically. Try this today. Eat one meal in complete silence. No podcasts, no music, no scrolling. Just you and your food. Notice how your mind rebels, itching to fill the space. That's the urgency trap in its purest form, but stay with it. Pay attention to flavors you usually miss: the tang of citrus, the crunch of crust. Observe how your breathing slows between bites. This isn't just mindfulness, it's resistance training against the modern cult of noise. The Stoics didn't retreat into silence to escape life, they used it to engage more deeply. There's a neurological magic to this practice. Studies show that silence triggers neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells, while constant noise floods us with cortisol. The ancients didn't have MRIs, but they sensed the restorative power of quiet. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not in a bustling forum, but in the pre-dawn hush of his campaign tent. Your kitchen table can become that tent. One silent meal won't solve your problems, but it might reveal how many of them stem from never letting your thoughts settle long enough to see clearly. The modern world will call this radical. The Stoics called it basic hygiene for the mind. Pythagoras students emerged from their silent training not as mutes, but as precise speakers, people whose words carried weight because they weren't wasted. Your version might start smaller, 30 minutes without filling the air with chatter or distraction. The goal isn't to eliminate conversation, but to remember that silence isn't a void to fear. It's the blank page where your wisest self begins to write. Sleep doesn't just restore your body, it resets your mind's relationship with urgency. The Stoics didn't view sleep as mere downtime, but as a daily rehearsal in surrender, a chance to practice letting go of what you can't control. Musonius Rufus, the philosopher who slept on bare ground to train his discipline, called moderation in rest the foundation of a steady mind. Not too little, not too much, just enough to wake with clarity rather than lethargy. Imagine your pre-sleep ritual not as collapsing into bed exhausted, but as consciously releasing the day's mental clutter. Try this tonight. As you turn off the lights, ask yourself, what am I choosing to release before sleep? Is it the unresolved argument with your partner? The unfinished project gnawing at you, the anxiety about tomorrow's meeting? Name it, then visualize placing it in a box outside your bedroom door. You're not denying these concerns, you're declaring that even they must respect the boundary of rest. The modern world treats sleep as either a luxury or a battleground tracked by apps, optimized with supplements, or sacrificed to hustle culture. But the Stoics approached it with intentional simplicity. No blue light filters, though they'd have approved. No sleep trackers obsessing over REM cycles, just a deliberate unwinding of the mind. Seneca described his nightly routine as putting the day to rest, a mental accounting where he'd briefly review his actions, note where he'd stumbled or grown, then consciously release the ledger. His version of sleep hygiene wasn't about blackout curtains, but about blackout mental space. If you've ever lain awake replaying a conversation or scripting tomorrow's tasks, you've felt the cost of skipping this Stoic step. Here's where modern science echoes ancient wisdom. Research shows that writing down worries before bed can reduce sleep latency, the time it takes to fall asleep, by nearly 50%. The Stoics didn't have journals by their bedsides, but they practiced something similar: the evening examen, a brief reflection to separate what deserved their mental energy from what didn't. Try adapting it tonight. Take 3 minutes to answer 2 questions. What today was within my control? And what must I accept is not? The first might include your effort on a project, your kindness to a stranger. The second, your boss's mood, a delayed flight, the rain on your picnic. This isn't about solving problems, it's about drawing a line between your responsibility and life's unpredictability. When you do this consistently, sleep stops being a struggle against racing thoughts and becomes what the Stoics intended: a daily practice in trust. Consider the alternative, the all-too-common habit of carrying the day's unresolved urgency into bed. Your phone pings with a late email, and suddenly you're mentally drafting replies instead of drifting off. Or you scroll through news feeds, flooding your brain with stimuli precisely when it needs calm. Musonius Rufus warned against soft living, but he wasn't advocating for discomfort. He was condemning the lack of conscious choice, that midnight scroll. It's not relaxation, it's surrender to distraction's lazy grip. The Stoic alternative, a digital sunset. 1 hour before bed, silence your devices and do something unequivocally analog: sketch, fold laundry, read a physical book. Not because it's trendy, but because it rebuilds your capacity to be present with your own thoughts. The deepest sleep secret the Stoics knew: preparation begins at dawn. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations at daybreak, but his evening practice was just as vital: reviewing the day's events without judgment, then releasing them like leaves floating down a stream. This isn't passive acceptance, it's active discernment. When you train your mind to distinguish between what's yours to carry and what's yours to release, sleep becomes more than rest. It becomes the daily act of faith that the world will continue spinning without your vigilance, that problems will keep until morning, and that stillness isn't found in perfect silence, but in the courage to pause your endless mental commentary. Tonight, when you turn out the light, don't just close your eyes, close the day. The emails, the regrets, the what-ifs, they'll still be there tomorrow. But for these next hours, they don't get a seat at the table. Scrolling through social media often feels like walking through a hall of mirrors, each reflection subtly distorted, each image carefully curated to show only what someone wants you to see. That pang in your chest when you see a friend's promotion, a colleague's vacation, or an influencer's seemingly perfect life, that's the comparison trap, and it's one of urgency's most insidious disguises. Epictetus, the Stoic who transformed personal suffering into unshakable wisdom, saw this coming centuries ago. If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. His point wasn't about ignorance, it was about liberation. The moment you measure your worth against someone else's highlight reel, you hand over your peace to an algorithm designed to keep you restless. Think about the last time you closed an app feeling emptier than when you opened it. Maybe it was a fitness influencer whose day in the life video made your own routine seem inadequate, or a former classmate flaunting a milestone you haven't reached. That hollow ache isn't accidental, it's by design. Social platforms thrive on manufactured urgency, convincing us that everyone else is winning while we're falling behind. But the Stoics practiced something radical, deliberate indifference to externals, not because they didn't care about growth, but because they refused to let others' benchmarks dictate their self-worth. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself: "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Imagine applying that to your feed. Instead of thinking, "Why isn't my life like that?" you'd ask, "Is this comparison serving my growth or stealing my joy?" Here's where modern psychology and ancient philosophy collide. Studies show that passive scrolling, consuming content without interaction, fuels envy and depression. The Stoic antidote: active curation, not by deleting all social media, but by auditing it with the precision of a museum curator. Tonight, try this. Scroll through your following list with Epictetus' question in mind. Does this account inspire virtue or provoke discontent? That travel photographer whose posts ignite wonder. Keep the coworker who subtly brags about late-night workaholism. Unfollow. This isn't avoidance, it's boundary setting for your attention. Seneca practiced this with the people in his physical circles, writing, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." Your digital circles deserve the same scrutiny. The deeper truth: comparison doesn't just steal joy, it warps time. When you measure your chapter 1 against someone else's chapter 20, you're not just envying their present, you're ignoring their unseen struggles and your own trajectory. The Stoics called this the illusion of linear progress. Picture two trees, one sprouted years ago, tall and leafy, the other just breaking soil. Comparing their heights today misses the point. Each grows at its own pace in its own season. Musonius Rufus, who taught philosophy in exile, put it plainly: why measure your inner growth by another's outer show? So here's the challenge: unfollow one account today, just one, that consistently leaves you feeling lesser. Not with resentment, but with the quiet confidence of someone guarding their mental space. Replace it with a Stoic follow, perhaps a historian sharing lessons from antiquity, or an artist documenting the messy process behind polished results. The shift won't just clean your feed, it'll recalibrate your mind. Urgency thrives on false benchmarks. Contentment grows when you remember that no curated grid can capture the full, flawed, beautiful scope of a human life. The next time you open that app, let Epictetus' voice cut through the noise. He who laughs at himself never runs out of things to laugh at. Your worth isn't out there, it's in here, in the unposted moments where real life unfolds. The heat of the moment is where regrets are born, that instant when anger or panic hijacks your better judgment, and words fly faster than thought. Seneca, the Stoic who navigated the treacherous courts of Nero, developed a radical defense against this: the 24-hour rule. His advice was simple but transformative. When you are angry, do not act, do not speak, until you have repeated the 24 letters of the alphabet. Today, our alphabet is longer, but the principle holds. Before firing off that email, before confronting a coworker, before making any decision fueled by adrenaline, pause. Not for seconds or for a full day. This isn't procrastination, it's strategic detachment. Picture this: your manager sends a late-night critique of your project, nitpicking details you spent weeks perfecting. Your fingers hover over the keyboard, ready to defend your work, or worse, retaliate. This is the fork in the road Seneca mapped out. React now, and you risk trading temporary satisfaction for lasting damage. Wait 24 hours and something magical happens. The emotional charge dissipates like fog under morning sun. What felt like an emergency at 9 p.m. often reveals itself as trivial by 9 a.m. The Stoics called this the gift of time, not passive waiting, but active perspective gathering. The rule's power lies in its interruption of urgency's momentum. Modern neuroscience confirms what Seneca intuited. The amygdala, the brain's threat detector, needs at least 6 hours to return to baseline after intense provocation. By imposing a full day's delay, you're not just calming down, you're allowing your prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason, to regain control. Try it with small irritations first. A friend cancels plans last minute. Sit with the disappointment overnight before responding. A delivery arrives damaged. Sleep on it before demanding a refund. You'll notice how often the need to react vanishes entirely. Seneca's letters reveal a man who practiced this discipline ruthlessly. When insulted publicly, he'd draft scathing rebuttals, then lock them in a drawer for days. Upon rereading, he almost always tossed them, noting how much strife arises from words spoken in haste. His version of the 24-hour rule wasn't about suppressing emotions, it was about refining them. Anger, he believed, could be a useful signal, but only if harnessed wisely. Like a master vintner, he let his initial reactions ferment until their raw edge mellowed into something potent but palatable. Here's where modern communication betrays us. Instant messaging, push notifications, and read receipts create the illusion that immediacy equals sincerity. But the Stoics measured virtue in deliberate action, not speed. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching philosophy, framed it as a test. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The 24-hour rule flips the script. Instead of asking, "How should I react?" you ask, "Does this deserve my reaction at all?" Apply this to digital conflicts where tone is easily misread and messages linger forever. That ambiguous text from a partner, let it breathe overnight. The passive-aggressive Slack message, bookmark it for tomorrow's cooler-headed self. Each delay is a vote for your long-term peace over short-term gratification. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire amid constant crises, journaled reminders like, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Calm, in this sense, isn't the absence of fire, it's the mastery of when to light it. The true test comes when others question your silence. Why didn't you respond? They'll ask, mistaking patience for indifference. Here's the Stoic reply: because I value my words too much to waste them. Today, choose one provocation, a rude comment, a frustrating email, and give it the 24-hour treatment. Watch how often the urgent becomes obsolete, and how effortlessly stillness wins the battles urgency tries to start. A single misplaced pen on your desk seems harmless until you spend 10 minutes searching for it while a deadline looms. That's the hidden tax of clutter. It doesn't just occupy space, it colonizes your attention. Marcus Aurelius, who governed an empire from war camps and makeshift offices, wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." He wasn't advocating for empty rooms, but for intentional space, an environment where every object earns its place by serving purpose, not distraction. Your cluttered desk isn't just messy, it's a battleground where your focus fights a guerrilla war against trivial demands. Consider the psychology behind this. Visual clutter creates cognitive load. Your brain constantly processes unfinished tasks symbolized by that stack of unread reports, the tangled charger cords, the sticky notes shouting reminders. Researchers at Princeton found that physical disorder reduces concentration and increases stress hormones. The Stoics anticipated this 2 millennia ago with their concept of apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from unnecessary passions. A cluttered space fuels unnecessary mental noise. Simplicity creates room for clarity. Epictetus, who owned little more than a wooden bowl until he saw a child drinking from cupped hands and threw even that away, taught that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Translate this to your workspace. Productivity consists not in having every tool at hand, but in knowing exactly where to find what matters. Here's the experiment today. Remove one unnecessary item from your desk. Not as a cleaning chore, but as a philosophical act. That expired coupon buried under papers, discard it. The dried out highlighter, retire it. The novelty mug you never use. Relocate it. With each removal, ask Marcus Aurelius' question: does this object help or hinder my pursuit of virtue? For the Stoics, virtue meant excellence of character, and excellence thrives in uncluttered environments. A surgeon's scalpel isn't stored amid kitchen utensils. It rests in precise placement for instant, flawless use. Your workspace deserves the same respect. The magic lies in the cumulative effect. One item today, another tomorrow. Soon you'll spot deeper patterns. That pile of old magazines, it mirrors your habit of postponing decisions. The jumble of cables, it reflects a reluctance to establish systems. Minimalism, in the Stoic sense, isn't about barren aesthetics. It's a mirror revealing where you've outsourced mental order to physical chaos. Seneca's writing desk likely held just wax tablets and a stylus, not because he was poor, but because he knew every added object diluted attention. Now extend this beyond your desk. Your phone's home screen cluttered with unused apps. Apply the Stoic filter. Does this icon serve my purpose or someone else's revenue model? Your closet stuffed with maybe someday clothes. Ask Epictetus' question: if I didn't already own this, would I acquire it now? Modern consumerism screams that more equals better. The Stoics whispered, better is knowing what's enough. That's why minimalism isn't deprivation, it's the liberation of realizing most possessions are just unexamined inertia. Tonight, stand at your workspace's threshold like a general surveying a battlefield. The enemy isn't the mess, it's the unconscious tolerance of it. Remove one item not to tidy, but to declare, from this space forward, nothing enters that doesn't serve your highest aim. The Stoics didn't avoid possessions, they avoided possession by possessions. Your turn. Rain pounds against your window just as you're about to leave for an important meeting. No umbrella, no time to wait it out. Your stomach drops, but here's the Stoic twist: the storm was never yours to control. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned physical hardship into mental training, had a favorite teaching tool: the weather. You don't command the rain to stop, he'd say, but you can choose not to let it drench your spirit. That's the core of Stoic flexibility, recognizing the line between what happens to you and how you happen to it. Modern life bombards us with imperfect conditions: delayed flights, spilled coffee, Wi-Fi outages at critical moments. We rage against these like warriors battling the tide, exhausting ourselves against forces that won't bend to our will. But what if, instead of resistance, we practiced the art of the pivot? Consider the airport scenario. Your flight's cancelled, the gate agent sighs, the line snakes endlessly, your plans lie in ruins. The modern reflex is to fume, refresh the app compulsively, or vent on social media. The Stoic approach: a three-step reset. First, the dichotomy of control. Is this delay within my power to change? If no, and runway decisions rarely are step 2 kicks in asset allocation, that unexpected hour becomes a gift to read, to people watch, to stretch stiff muscles from too much sitting. Finally, the reframe. This isn't a derailment, it's a detour showing me scenery I'd have missed otherwise. Epictetus didn't just preach this, he lived it. Banished from Rome, he turned exile into a chance to teach philosophy under the open sky, proving adaptability isn't surrender, it's strategy. The magic lies in preparation, not for specific disasters, but for the certainty that some will arise. Ancient Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the deliberate envisioning of life's curveballs. Try it with minor irritants first, stuck in traffic. Instead of white-knuckling the wheel, test your ability to enjoy an album you've neglected or call a friend you've been meaning to reconnect with, missed a deadline due to a power outage. Use the forced pause to reassess whether the project's original direction still holds water. These aren't consolation prizes, they're demonstrations of a profound truth. Obstacles morph into opportunities when viewed through the lens of flexibility. Modern psychology confirms what Epictetus intuited. Studies on stress inoculation show that people who anticipate challenges not only handle them better but often spot hidden advantages. A musician whose string breaks mid-performance learns to play on, discovering new techniques in limitation. A writer whose laptop dies rediscovers the flow of pen on paper, unlocking cadences screen glare had dulled. The Stoics went further. They believed imperfect conditions were life's way of sanding down our rough edges. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders like, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. Your delayed flight isn't blocking your journey, it's part of it. Here's where most self-help advice falls short. It tells you to stay positive, as if gritted teeth and forced smiles could magic away frustration. Stoicism offers something sturdier, not denial but reorientation. When Seneca's ship was caught in a storm, he didn't pretend the waves weren't terrifying. He noted how fear sharpened his appreciation for calm harbors. Apply this to your next interruption, the client who reschedules last minute, an opening to refine your proposal further, the babysitter canceling, a chance to rediscover the messy joy of an unplanned evening with your kids. Flexibility isn't about liking disruptions, it's about mining them for unexpected value. The ultimate test comes when life doesn't just drizzle but pours. Chronic illness, job loss, betrayal here, Stoic flexibility shows its steel. Epictetus, born into slavery, asked his students, "What if someone breaks your leg?" His answer, "Then you'll limp with grace," not a platitude but a practice. Modern equivalents might be, "What if the diagnosis upends your plans? Then you'll redefine what living fully means." What if the market crashes your business? Then you'll discover skills comfort never demanded. The rain doesn't stop, but you learn to dance in it, not because you wanted to, but because the dance itself becomes its own kind of shelter. So next time clouds gather where you expected sun, pause, not to curse the weather, but to ask Epictetus' question, "Given this new condition, what can I now do that I couldn't before?" The answer might just lead you somewhere brighter than your original destination. Gratitude isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling, it's a full stop to urgency's relentless march. Picture this, you're rushing through your evening, mentally ticking off tomorrow's to-dos, when suddenly you notice the way golden light spills through the window, catching the steam from your tea. For that split second, the world stops. That's the power gratitude wields, not as passive appreciation, but as active resistance against the tyranny of next. Marcus Aurelius, who began each dawn listing thanks not for grand abstractions like health or wealth, but for the smell of baking bread, the scratch of his pen on parchment, understood this deeply. His morning ritual wasn't about positivity, it was about presence. By anchoring his attention in the tangible, he created a buffer between himself and the empire's endless demands. Modern neuroscience reveals why this works. The act of noticing small pleasures triggers a cascade of neurotransmitters: dopamine for reward, serotonin for calm, effectively hitting the pause button on cortisol, the stress hormone that fuels urgency. But the Stoics didn't need brain scans to prove it. They knew gratitude was the antidote to what Seneca called the disease of more, that insatiable itch for the next task, the next achievement, the next distraction. When you train yourself to spot the orange peel's sharp scent as you peel it, or the satisfying click of your front door locking at night, you're not just being mindful. You're conducting guerrilla warfare against a culture that profits from your restless dissatisfaction. Here's the practice. Tonight, before sleep claims you, list 3 non-digital joys from your day. Not the big-ticket items, not the promotion or the vacation plans, but the fleeting moments you'd typically overlook. The cool side of the pillow when you flipped it at midnight. The way your dog sighed when they curled against your feet. The unexpected laughter with a stranger in the elevator. Write them down or simply hold them in your mind like polished stones. This isn't about manufacturing happiness, it's about excavating what urgency buried. Epictetus, who found joy in the simplicity of a single fig, would remind you, abundance isn't found by adding, but by subtracting the noise that obscures what's already there. The magic lies in specificity. I'm grateful for my family glides off the tongue without touching the heart, but I'm grateful for how my kid's hair stuck up like a duckling's feathers after nap time. That sticks. That's the difference between generic appreciation and what the Stoics called Eucharistia, the deep recognition of life's textured gifts. Marcus didn't thank the gods for health. He thanked them for knees that still bent smoothly after 50 years of military campaigns. This granular attention rewires your brain's filter, training it to spot beauty in the mundane like a treasure hunter spotting gold in river silt. Try this reframe. Urgency thrives on the myth of scarcity, that there's never enough time, enough success, enough validation. Gratitude exposes the lie by revealing the wealth already present. When you end your day savoring the weight of a ripe tomato in your palm or the way rain tapped rhythmically on your umbrella, you're not just counting blessings, you're recalibrating your entire relationship with time. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Your 3 small joys tonight aren't a bedtime chore. They're rebellion proof that stillness wasn't somewhere else, but here all along, waiting for you to notice. The modern world will try to sell you gratitude as another task to optimize journaling apps, prompt decks, shareable lists. The Stoics whisper, put all that away. Just stand at your window for 30 seconds tonight. Feel the chill of the glass under your fingertips. Hear the distant hum of the city like a lullaby. That's your victory, not over urgency, but within it. The war wasn't won in a day, but in moments like these, strung together like beads on the thread of your attention. Stoic laughter isn't about cracking jokes in the face of hardship. It's about refusing to let life's absurdities steal your lightness. Seneca, who endured exile, chronic illness, and the whims of a mad emperor, wrote extensively about the power of humor as armor. We should make light of all things, he advised, and bear them with a smile. Not because the challenges aren't real, but because taking yourself too seriously adds weight to burdens already heavy enough. Think about the last time you tripped in public. In the moment, it felt catastrophic until you caught your breath and laughed at your own clumsiness. That pivot from embarrassment to amusement is Stoicism in action. You didn't deny the stumble, you simply chose not to let it define your day. Modern life serves up endless opportunities for this practice. The printer jams as you rush to a meeting, your coffee spills on freshly ironed clothes, a call drops mid-sentence with an important client. These aren't just annoyances, they're tests. The average reaction involves gritted teeth and muttered curses. The Stoic alternative, a chuckle, not forced positivity, but genuine recognition of life's chaotic choreography. Seneca described laughter as a brief vacation from the gravity of existence. When you find humor in a delayed flight or a misspelled email, you're not being frivolous, you're reclaiming agency over your mood. Consider the physiology behind this. Laughter triggers endorphins, the body's natural stress relievers, while reducing cortisol. Ancient philosophers didn't have fMRI machines, but they observed how a light heart weathered storms better than a clenched one. Marcus Aurelius, despite the weight of imperial rule, reminded himself daily, the universe is change, life is perspective. That perspective shift is the essence of Stoic humor. When traffic snarls your commute, you have two choices: rage against the unmoving cars or appreciate the extra time with your favorite podcast. One tightens your chest, the other loosens your grip on uncontrollables. The key lies in distinguishing mockery from mirth. The Stoics weren't advocating sarcasm or belittling genuine pain. Epictetus cautioned against laughter that wounds, emphasizing wit that uplifts rather than divides. Picture a colleague botching a presentation. Cruel laughter isolates, compassionate lightness, a shared grin at the universality of nerves connects. This nuance matters. Seneca's letters reveal a man who laughed with friends over shared human foibles, never at others' genuine struggles. Your worst workday blunder isn't a tragedy, it's material for future stories, if you have the perspective to see it that way. Try today's challenge. When frustration strikes, pause and ask, how might I laugh at this later? That delayed flight becomes an anecdote about airport yoga. The burnt dinner, a reminder of your commitment to culinary experimentation. The Stoics called this premeditatio ridiculorum, anticipating the humor in hindsight. By mentally fast-forwarding to the moment when today's crisis becomes tomorrow's punchline, you diffuse its power in real time. There's profound strength in this approach. Naval officers in training are taught to laugh during survival drills, not because hypothermia is funny, but because levity preserves critical thinking under duress. The Stoics applied this same principle to daily life. Your Wi-Fi crashing mid-deadline isn't a plot twist worthy of despair. It's a chance to practice resourcefulness and maybe finally read that book Gathering Dust. Laughter in this context isn't denial, it's defiance. A declaration that external chaos won't dictate internal weather. Seneca's most radical insight. He who laughs at himself never runs out of material. Modern life takes itself too seriously, from LinkedIn humblebrags to Instagram perfect lifestyles. Stoic laughter is the antidote, a willingness to embrace your own messiness. The next time you forget a name mid-introduction or send a text to the wrong group chat, channel Seneca. Smile not despite the blunder, but because of it. In that moment, you're not failing at perfection, you're excelling at being human, and what could be more liberating than that? The stress you're carrying right now, that tightness in your chest, the racing thoughts feels all-consuming in this moment. But imagine viewing it from the edge of the cosmos, where your entire lifetime is just a flicker in the grand sweep of eternity. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome at the height of its power, would often stare at the night sky from his military camps, reminding himself, think of the universal substance, of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to you. That shift in perspective wasn't about diminishing his struggles, but about seeing them in their true proportion. Consider the last thing that kept you awake with worry. Maybe it was a missed deadline, a harsh comment, a financial hiccup. Now ask, will this still sting in a year, 5 years, decades from now, when you're recalling the arc of your life? Will this moment even register? The Stoics called this the view from above, a mental exercise where you zoom out until skyscrapers become specks, oceans turn to puddles, and your current crisis reveals its temporary nature. It's not about dismissing your feelings, but about anchoring them in something sturdier than the immediacy of now. Here's the paradox: that work presentation you're agonizing over, the audience will forget it by next week, but the kindness you showed a stranger yesterday might ripple through generations. Cosmic perspective doesn't make your efforts meaningless, it reorders what truly matters. Picture a stone dropped in a pond. Urgency has us fixated on the splash, the loud, visible drama. Stoicism invites us to watch the ripples, instead the subtle, far-reaching consequences of patience, integrity, and presence. Try this tonight. Step outside and locate one bright star. That light traveled thousands of years to reach your eyes. The civilizations that rose and fell during its journey, the wars waged, the loves lost, all now just footnotes in history. Your current worry, held against that scale, doesn't vanish, but it finds its proper size. Marcus wrote in his private journal, "Remember how tiny the part you play is in the great drama of time." Not to humble you, but to free you. When you stop conflating every stressor with survival, you gain space to respond rather than react. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies on temporal distancing show that imagining your future self looking back reduces present anxiety by 50% or more. The client who's yelling today. In 6 months, you'll struggle to recall their name. The project that feels make or break. It's one thread in a tapestry you're still weaving. The Stoics weren't suggesting we float through life detached. They were teaching us to distinguish between storms that will pass and shores worth anchoring in. This perspective becomes practical when applied to daily irritations. Stuck in traffic, picture the Earth from space. Those taillights are just a faint glow on one tiny continent. Spilled coffee on your shirt, the Nile floods and recedes without drama. Your dry cleaning will survive. The real magic happens with larger challenges. A breakup, a career setback viewed through the lens of cosmic time. They transform from endings to turning points. As Seneca wrote after being exiled, no tree becomes rooted and sturdy unless many winds assail it. The test comes when embracing this feels like surrender. We cling to our stresses because they make us feel important, convinced that if we worry enough, we can control outcomes. But the universe hums along with or without our fretting. That's not nihilism, it's liberation. Your value isn't tied to how tightly you grip the wheel of circumstance. It lies in how you navigate the ride, knowing the road extends far beyond your horizon. So the next time urgency whispers that everything hinges on this moment, look up. Not for answers, but for context. The stars overhead have witnessed civilizations crumble and rebirth. Your crisis, held in that expanse, becomes something new, not insignificant, but survivable. Not the end of your story, but a sentence in a chapter you're still writing. The Stoics didn't offer escape from life's pressures. They gave us a telescope to see them clearly, and in seeing, to endure and transcend. Cato the Younger stood perfectly still as his political rival spat in his face. The crowd gasped, waiting for the fiery senator to retaliate, but he simply wiped his cheek and continued speaking as if nothing had happened. That moment, recorded by historians, wasn't just about restraint. It was a masterclass in Stoic stillness. While others chased fleeting victories, Cato cultivated an inner fortress no insult could penetrate. What made him remarkable wasn't his refusal to fight back, but his refusal to let another's chaos become his own. In a world where every provocation demands reaction, his calm wasn't weakness, it was warfare on different terms. History offers countless models of this unshakable presence. Take Epictetus, the former slave who turned physical suffering into philosophical fuel. When a student complained about life's unfairness, he responded not with pity, but with a question: would you rather be right or free? His point cut deep. Stillness isn't found by changing circumstances, but by changing your relationship to them. Then there's Portia Catanis, Cotto's daughter, who famously endured a self-inflicted wound to prove her mental fortitude. Extreme, perhaps, but her message echoes through time. Stillness isn't the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger. You don't need a time machine to find modern embodiments. Consider the surgeon whose hands don't tremble during a life or death operation, or the teacher who maintains composure when a classroom erupts. Stillness isn't about never feeling pressure, it's about developing the muscle memory of calm. The firefighter charging into smoke, the negotiator facing an armed suspect, the parent soothing a screaming child, they all share Cotto's secret. Their power comes not from suppressing emotion, but from channeling it with precision. Think of someone in your life who radiates this quality. Maybe it's a grandparent who weathered hardships without bitterness, or a colleague who handles crises with quiet competence. What sets them apart isn't perfection, but perspective, the understanding that most storms are temporary. The Stoics called this the view from above, imagining your current struggle as if observing it from mountaintops or stars. From that vantage point, insults shrink, deadlines loosen their grip, and what seemed urgent often reveals itself as trivial. Now turn the lens inward. When faced with provocation, do you mirror Cotto's restraint or the spitter's impulsivity? The test isn't in grand gestures, but in daily micro-moments, holding your tongue during a heated debate, resisting the itch to refresh your inbox for the 10th time, or sitting through discomfort without reaching for distraction. These are the training grounds where stillness transforms from philosophy to lived experience. The invitation isn't to idolize historical figures, but to recognize their humanity and yours. Cotto wasn't born unflappable, he practiced. Epictetus didn't shrug off suffering instinctively. He trained his mind through exile and disability. Their examples matter not because they're unreachable, but because they prove calm is conquerable. Who in your world, past or present, shows you what that looks like? Name them. Study their pauses, their breaths, their choices. Then go forth and do likewise, not as imitation, but as inspiration. The path to stillness isn't found in their footsteps, but in the space between their steps where you'll discover your own rhythm. Imagine waking up one morning without the reflex to check your phone. No notifications, no endless scroll, just quiet sunlight and the space to hear your own thoughts. This isn't a fantasy, it's the practice of a digital Sabbath, a modern twist on an ancient discipline. The Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they understood the corrosive effect of constant stimulation. Seneca would take regular breaks from Rome's chaos to live simply in the countryside, writing, "The person who has everywhere has nowhere. Today, that nowhere has become our most precious commodity, uninterrupted time to reclaim what urgency steals." A digital Sabbath isn't about rejecting technology, it's about reclaiming choice. Think of it as a weekly reset button, whether it's Sunday mornings offline or Wednesday evenings screen-free. The format matters less than the function, creating sacred space where your attention isn't auctioned to the highest bidder. Start small, just 2 hours where your phone stays in airplane mode. Use that time to read a physical book, walk without headphones, or cook without streaming a tutorial. The first few attempts will feel jarring. Your fingers might twitch for phantom notifications, your mind racing with, "What if I miss something important?" That discomfort is the point. It reveals how deeply digital dependency has rewired us. History offers a striking parallel in the Jewish tradition of Sabbath, a day of rest where even checking emails violates spiritual boundaries. The Stoics practiced something similar through voluntary discomfort, periodically abstaining from comforts to prove they weren't enslaved to them. Musonius Rufus, Epictetus' teacher, would have his students go barefoot in winter or sleep on hard ground, not as punishment, but to remember, nothing is needed beyond the basics. Your version might look like resisting the urge to Google during a dinner table debate, or leaving your phone behind on a weekend hike. The goal isn't deprivation, but rediscovery of conversation that meanders without Wikipedia fact checks, of boredom that sparks creativity, of meals where the only glow comes from candlelight. Consider the ripple effects. A study from the University of Maryland found that even short tech breaks increase productivity by 23%. But the Stoics would argue the real benefit is existential. It breaks the illusion that the digital world can't function without you. That client email will wait. The group chat won't dissolve in your absence. The news cycle will continue spinning whether you witness every rotation or not. Marcus Aurelius faced this on a grander scale, ruling an empire yet carving out pre-dawn hours to write in his journal undisturbed. If a Roman emperor could guard his stillness, what's our excuse? The resistance usually takes two forms. First, the practical, but my job requires me to be available. Here's the Stoic rebuttal. Unless you're an ear doctor, your emergencies are likely someone else's poor planning. Set clear boundaries, an autoresponder saying, I check messages weekday mornings and afternoons. For urgent matters, call. You'll be stunned how few calls come. The second resistance is emotional. FOMO, the fear that life is happening elsewhere without you. Epictetus diagnosed this perfectly. Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes of them. That Instagram post from a friend's brunch, it's a highlight reel, not reality. Your unplugged morning isn't missing out, it's opting in. To deeper presence, to undivided conversations, to the kind of stillness that fuels genuine connection. Try this variation, the themed Sabbath. 1 week, go screen-free. The next, focus on analog pleasures, board games, handwritten letters, sketching. Notice how each format reveals different facets of your mind. Digital fasting, like its culinary counterpart, isn't about what you remove, it's about what surfaces in the absence. That book you've been meaning to read for months. It finally gets opened, the creative project languishing in your mind. It finds breathing room. Even boredom becomes fertile ground, as Seneca observed. Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. Sitting with undistracted stillness is its own kind of bravery in a world screaming for your attention. The true test comes when the Sabbath ends. Do you plunge back into the digital torrent with the same desperate hunger, or has the fast recalibrated your appetite? The Stoics measured progress not in grand gestures, but in subtle shifts. The ability to check email without falling down a 3-hour rabbit hole, or to scroll social media without the gnawing sense that everyone else is living better. Your weekly pause becomes a tuning fork, realigning your relationship with technology again and again. It's not about perfection. Some weeks you'll cave and check the news. But as Marcus wrote, the impediment to action advances action. Each reset, each fresh attempt builds the muscle of intentional living. Ultimately, the digital Sabbath isn't an escape from modern life, it's an insistence on living it fully. The screens will still be there when you return, but you might just find yourself lingering a little longer in the unplugged world, savoring what Seneca called the luxury of doing nothing, the rarest and most revolutionary act in an age of endless distraction. The silent war between urgency and stillness isn't fought with weapons or words. It's waged in the quiet moments when you choose between reacting and pausing, between surrendering to the chaos and standing firm in your own peace. What we've explored together isn't just ancient philosophy, it's a battle plan for the modern mind. Stoicism doesn't promise a life without storms, it teaches you how to stand steady within them. From Seneca's 24-hour rule to Marcus Aurelius' pre-dawn journaling, these tools aren't relics, they're lifelines thrown across centuries to remind us the rush of the world only moves as fast as you let it. Every time you resist the ping of a notification, every moment you pause before responding in anger, every deep breath taken when your pulse begs you to panic, you're not just practicing Stoicism. You're proving that stillness isn't passive, it's the most active rebellion there is. The urgency culture screaming at you to move faster, do more, be everywhere at once. It's a mirage. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned adversity into unshakable wisdom, laid it bare. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Not the other way around, clarity before action, purpose before motion. You don't need to overhaul your life to start winning this silent war. Pick one practice from today, maybe the 4-count breath when stress hits, or a single meal eaten without screens. Master that, then add another. This isn't about perfection, it's about progression. The Roman Stoics didn't build Rome in a day, and you won't rewire your mind in one either. But every small victory over urgency, every reclaimed moment of stillness weakens its grip. If this resonated with you, imagine what other Stoic wisdom could unlock. Hit subscribe and join me as we keep exploring how ancient philosophy meets modern life. Because the war between urgency and stillness isn't ending anytime soon, but with these tools you'll always have the upper hand. Until next time, remember, the world will keep spinning. You get to choose whether you spin with it or stand firm, rooted in the unshakable calm that's always been your birthright.